In this video, we're going to have a look at Pythagoras' theorem. Now, when you're thinking about using Pythagoras' theorem, you've got to think about a few things. Number one, are you looking at a question that involves a right angle triangle? So one that has a 90-degree angle symbolized by this square in one of its corners. So that's point number one you've got to think about. Number two is if they give you two lengths and you need to find the third length. So for example, if this was 4 centimeters and this was 3 centimeters and they wanted you to find this length here, then we could apply Pythagoras' theorem because they've given you two lengths and you need to find a third length. So in that case, you would be wanting to use Pythagoras' theorem. Now, Pythagoras' theorem is given by a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Now, when you are looking at a question that you've decided involves Pythagoras, then the first thing you've got to do is you have to label the longest length, which we call the c squared. So this is the longest length. Normally called the hypotenuse, but we'll talk about that more when we're looking at trigonometry. So the longest length is always opposite the right angle. So I'm going to label this C. Now, the other two lengths can be labeled A or B. That doesn't matter. The most important one is that you label the longest length, which is across from the right angle, you label it C. And then the other two you can label A or B. So if I call this A and I call this B. I could have done it the other way around, but I've just decided to do it that way around. Now, the reason that Pythagoras works, if I just put a few things on top, this is our right angle triangle, and we have this length which is 4 centimeters. Then if we square 4 centimeters, that is 4 squared, okay? So that is 4 squared. So there's 16 in there for my A. And then if I put on b squared, which is a 3 by 3 square, that's 9. So plus 3 squared, which is b squared, which is 9. And that equals my c squared, which in this case is a 5 by 5 squared. Because 16 plus 9 is 25, and that proves that it works. So if you added up all the little squares in there, all the little squares in there, you would get all the squares in the longest, with the square that is formed from the longest length. So that's how Pythagoras works. Okay, so going back to this question. So if we started off with this triangle and we wanted to find C, obviously we would label A, B, and C, where C is the longest length, and then we would square the A, which I did. We would square the B, which I did, 4 squared plus 3 squared, and we haven't done that bit in a minute, pretend that's not there. So 4 squared is 16, 3 squared is 9. Add them together is 25, but the 25 is what we refer to as being c squared, is 25. So to find c, we have to rearrange by moving the squared across the equal sign, which the opposite of squaring is to square root. So c is the square root of 25, which is 5, which we talked about earlier, being our other side of our triangle.